Hey everybody, welcome back to the Contrarians. We've got a cool little Contrarians Presents episode. Joe reached out to me with this idea or this topic of the WoW album, Wendy O. Williams' 1984 release, WoW, he mentioned that he thought that this was actually one of the best Kiss records that Kiss never put out, or one of the best Kiss 80's albums. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to kind of explore that today in the connection to Kiss. Does that make sense? Is that kind of what you were talking
You
about?
hit the nail on the head, Marco, and thanks for having me on again. So I have a question for all of you, if that's how Paul Stanley would say. What would you call an album that features Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley, Eric Carr, and Vinnie Vincent? Go ahead,
Wow.
answer.
Wow.
Well, that's the WoW album, yeah. But I look at it as a Kiss album. So, and I'm a big proponent. I'm a huge Plasmatics, and I'm a huge fan of this album, the WoW album. I'll try to get it. I know the background kind of, we'll see there, but yeah, Wendy Williams was a maverick ahead of her time with feminist women's rights. If you listen to her lyrics, addressing a lot of the things that are being addressed nowadays. But and presently, Miley Cyrus just ripped the Plasmatics logo off on her latest album, although the music doesn't match it. And I heard an interview with Wes Beach, who I've been trying to contact, former Plasmatics member, and he's the only guy from Plasmatics that plays on the w.o.w album. And they have no legal recourse. There's nothing, nothing there. But I can go in a little background on my fandom of the Plasmatics and how this led to w.o.w.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just wanted to qualify or clarify that, like, I'm not super familiar with Wendy O. Williams. Like, I know who she is and I know what she's done and I know the Plasmatics, but I don't
yeah,
know all of their albums and all of their songs. But I did listen to this one quite a bit. But yeah, take it
yeah.
away.
Yeah. So, they started as a punk band, and I wasn't that huge of a fan. I had the Butcher Baby album and all that. But as far as my venture into punk, and I know Martin goes over punk quite a bit in his shows, I was pretty much Sex Pistols and Ramones, and everything outside of that I couldn't get into. So the early Plasmatic stuff, eh. But then they appeared on Second City TV. I know you're Canadian, and I love that. And the cast, I mean, John Candy, Martin Short, I believe, Eugene Levy, who's now has his own show with his son, right? And it was ahead of time. Catherine O'Hara, great show, funny. So John Candy did the Fishing Musician, where he played this fisherman, and he'd have rock bands on, and they had the Plasmatics, and they just released an EP called Metal Priestess, and you can look it up on YouTube. I can post in the show notes later. It was an awesome performance. They played the Doom song, and I forget what other, but I distinctly remembered the Doom song. So I immediately next day went out and bought the Metal Priestess EP, and that's when the Plasmatics went from punk to full blown metal. Then subsequently after that, they released Coup d'etat, which was produced by Dieter Dirks of Scorpions fame and Accept, I believe. And that was full on metal. And that's when they opened up for Kiss. In the interim, in that time frame, Wendy Williams also struck up a friendship with Lenny. And a lot of that stuff is foggy, and I've tried to delve into it, but they did crossover. Lemmy was a big fan of women in rock. He did work with Girls School, and then he did work with Wendy O. Williams, and they did crossover work where he did Master Plan, and then they put Stay Clean on No Class. They put No Class on the Coup d'etat album, and they did Stand By Your Man, which didn't sit well with Fast Eddie Clark. I think that got the wheels moving for him to leave and start Fastway. But yeah, so then the Plasmatics went into the heavy metal world, and that tour I mentioned, I think the first show I was on with you when we did our albums that will die, fall on a sword for. You mentioned who your favorite opening act was, and I mentioned the Plasmatics because they opened for the Kiss on the Creatures of the Night tour, and that just was an all-around awesome show. they were an awesome band opening up. And then Kiss put on there was maybe 3,000 fans there, not a big attendance. Eric Carr threw his drumstick and it went over the crowd and hit the floor in back of us. That's how small the crowd was. But they put on a show like they were playing Tiger Stadium or a Giant Stadium. It was awesome. So from the Metal Priestess EP to Coup d'etat, I became really a huge fan. I actually like the song Master Plan. I think that was their first when they started less punk, more metal. And then I become a fan ever since. So then that leads to Gene Simmons striking up a friendship with Wendy Williams, and she goes solo and only keeps it's her manager, who is also her partner, Rod Swenson, and Wes Beach, who maybe T.C. Tolliver was on drums on. I think she kept him, but she dumped Richie Stotts, the tall, thin guy with the mohawk. Jean Beauvoir was out of the band, who would later subsequently write songs with Paul Stanley, interestingly enough. So Gene Simmons produced this, now it becomes a solo album, and Wendy Williams becomes a solo act. But as we started off with this show, it's a Kiss album. And it's one of my favorite Kiss albums. I put it on par with, in the timeline, you had Creatures where they come back, they're rocking again, maybe even more metal than ever. And then they Lick It Up, which I actually kind of like Lick It Up better than Creatures of the Night. I think the songwriting and Vinnie Vincent's guitar playing is more coherent, although he doesn't play. The best lead on the album is by Rick Derringer. But then I thought this comes out after Lick It Up that summer of '84, and I thought that was a lot more in line with Creatures of the Night and Lick It Up than Animalize. I'm not a big fan of Animalize. And then the fact Ace Frehley shows up on a song called Bump and Grind, I was thinking that he was back in the band. I was done with the buzzsaw guitars. I mean, I liked Eddie Van Halen and Randy Rhoads. After that, I'm like, I like the Jimmy Pages and the Ace Frehleys better. And Ace Frehley still put a signature on their sound. So I was hoping he was coming back, but he didn't. But yeah, this album is great. And is it my favorite Kiss album of the 80s? Quite possibly, and that's Contrarian, but it definitely stands up there with Creatures of the Night and Lick It Up. Now, I like Asylum. I like Paul's songs on Asylum. I think they're amazing, but Gene's work on Asylum is weak. And we can go over the tracks, because one of the tracks on this appears on Crazy Nights and is neutered as can be. It's a brilliant song on this album, and then on Crazy Nights, it is awful. So, yeah, I saw the Plasmatics open up for Kiss. I've seen Wendy O at a couple clubs here in Chicago. It was a blast. And then they did a reunion, and they played the Exit, which is a big punk club here, on their Maggots tour. So I've seen the Plasmatics twice, and I've seen Wendy O twice live. Then, unfortunately, she had a lot of mental health issues, which were well documented, and she took her own life in the early 90s, I believe, and that's unfortunate. But she was a maverick. I mean, she didn't take any crap from anybody, and if you listen to the lyrics, a lot of it's pertinent even for today, a lot of the issues that are coming up, and way ahead of her time. And it's unfortunate, because I would like to see her get her due. You see someone like Miley Cyrus rip her logo off, and there's no credit given there, and I think more, her doing rock history needs to come forth. That's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's extremely sad how she passed away, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'm looking at like the album credits. I did listen to the album quite a bit,
Right.
and I listened to the songs, and I do have notes, but I'm just looking at the credits just off Wikipedia. So you got Wendy O. Williams on vocals, Wes Beach on rhythm guitar and lead on It's My Life, Michael Ray on lead guitar, Gene Simmons as Reginald Van Helsing, bass
Exactly.
and producer.
He plays bass on
TC
the entire album,
Tolliver.
which he doesn't do on Creatures of the Night.
Right.
Yeah. He plays more bass on this than on the Kiss album.
Yeah, but you got, like
Yeah.
you said, you got Ace on lead guitar and Bump and Grind. You
Right.
got
Yeah.
Stanley on guitar and Ready to Rock. You got Eric Carr on drums on Legends Never Die. Like there's all the
Yeah.
Kiss members up and down are on this record.
Right.
Other
And
than Bruce or Mark St. John, none of those guys were on this, I don't think, at least not as credited. But
no, exactly. Yeah. And you mentioned Ready to Rock. That is basically Paul Stanley and Wendy O. Williams and the drummer. It's Paul Stanley, and it. If you saw Kiss on those early '80s tours, even I think it's on the Animalize Uncensored. He does that guitar solo, and it sounds a lot like it. And it's just him playing guitar with drums in the background. Now I have torn my hair out trying to find out how they recorded this album, how this all came about. West Beach was on a podcast, and it sounded like they were digging into it, and he was talking about it, and then one of the other guys jumped in on the podcast, and they just dropped the ball and they changed the subject. And I talked to Ace Frehley's manager about 5 years ago, and he didn't know much about it, but he was trying to get me in touch with Mitch Weissman, who is from Beatlemania and played on Gene's solo album, and he's on this album. He said he would know a lot about it, but there's so much mystery about it. Everybody knows so much inertia, so much. There's two things about Kiss that, everyone knows everything about Kiss, but there's two things. There's this album, how it was recorded, how did they get Ace Frehley? Why isn't Paul, how did they get Paul Stanley involved? And who played drums on Larger Than Life on side 4? Those are the two things that no one can. I actually asked Gene when I met him the second time who played drums, and he's like, "Oh, it was Peter Criss." He goes, "But maybe it was Anton Fig." So I'm like, "All right, he couldn't answer that question either."
Yeah. He
But
says
yeah,
stuff. I've heard him say stuff like, when you take like a 5 hour car ride or something, and then somebody asks you, what did that second tree on the street look like in
yeah,
hour 2 or something, and you're just like, I don't know what it looked like. I was just along for the ride kind of. I've heard him say stuff like that. But
right.
another thing I want to mention, Adam Mitchell is co-writer on one of the songs on here, and he co-wrote a bunch of stuff with Kiss in the
Exactly.
80s,
Yeah.
specifically in
And
the
then you
80s.
have It's My Life, the best single that Kiss never released, which I don't. In fact, Gene Simmons on his last solo, when I saw him here in suburban Chicago in St. Charles, Illinois, he ripped in the Paul Stanley. I mean, and he said that little B word, Paul Stanley wouldn't let me use this song on a Kiss album, and he played It's My Life because that's when the Vault was out and everything. But yeah, so they gave it to Wendy O. Williams, and that was the video for it. This album didn't sell very well, but I listened. It might have been my most listened to album in '84. I had it on constantly. There's great songs, and so if you want to go through the songs, or
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I thought that the album was very heavy, very edgy and raw sounding.
yeah,
I did listen to Commander Chaos, and to be
yeah,
honest, I thought Commander Chaos sounded a little heavier, the production was a little clearer, and the album
right,
itself was a little thrashier even.
yeah,
However, the WoW album is not on Spotify, so I listened to the WoW album on YouTube. So I can't comment on the production that much because I have no idea how it was ripped to YouTube. I have no idea like where the source came from or anything, but it was very heavy. It's pretty good. I like most of the songs. It's funny because It's My Life was one of the songs I didn't like. I don't
okay,
know if, and I've heard the Kiss version. I
yeah,
don't know if it's just because you listen to something on this, like even the first track, the first two tracks, the first song reminded me too much of I Love Rock and Roll. Like it's almost the same hook, even. I love, you know what I
right,
mean?
yeah, okay,
So that kind of threw me off a little bit, although I didn't mind the first song as much. The second song just doesn't seem to fit with the rest of the album, especially when you listen to Priestess or Thief in the Night, which is a Kiss song, but it's super heavy here.
there you
And
go,
like
right,
the production on Thief of the Night in Crazy Nights is a lot slicker, but
yeah,
this version is a lot, it's better. It's almost Ozzy-ish. Some of the
right.
vocal performance almost reminds me of Ozzy in points, but I really like Thief in the Night done by Wendy O. Williams, and I love her performance across the record. Her vocal, as somebody who wasn't super familiar, other than like I know The Damned by Plasmatics, which is a super badass song and video. Like her performance on here, when you listen to it, her vocals are so gnarly and heavy and like
Yeah, I mean, she's not Ann Wilson.
growly and
Yeah, she's not Ann Wilson. I mean, she is what she is. It's more like a female Lemmy, possibly. That growly, but that's the image that they are. They're hard and heavy band.
but
Yeah,
but
I mean,
I do want to make, sorry, just
yeah,
one last comment before I throw it back to you. It does sound like a Kiss record. Like when you listen, even songs like just looking at the Wikipedia, right? And it tells you who played what on what. The Kiss song, or sorry, Kiss song. Eric Carr plays on Legends Never Die. And I really
yeah,
like Opus in C minor. I think that's how
that's a great song. Yeah,
I like that one, even though it's a little mellower. I really like that song a lot.
right.
But like if you listen to the drums on Ready to Rock, it sounds like Creatures of the Night. Like
Yes.
it has the same drum sound as like Creatures of the Night. Even the guitars, it reminds. This is almost like a sister album to Creatures of the Night. Like they sound similar in a lot of ways. The heavy stuff on Creatures of the Night reminds me of this album.
I totally agree with you. That's why I stand by my contrarian thought that this is possibly the best Kiss album of the '80s. Um, yeah, it has a Creatures of the Night feel for me throughout the entire album. You bring up Thief in the Night. That's Gene Simmons writes that song with Mitch Weissman, right? And it just has that Creatures of the Night feel. And I know with Creatures of the Night, have you heard what he said to Michael James Jackson? Gene Simmons always has. I've heard interviews with different producers, like when he went up to the guy who produced Carnival of Souls. I'm blanking on his name, Toby Wright. He goes, "I want to be Billy Corgan." He went up to Michael James Jackson and he goes, "I want Eric Carr to sound like John Bonham." And he's like, "Well, I can't because he's not John Bonham." But they had that big, heavy drum sound. And I think Gene, put that on this album. So Thief in the Night has that, you know, it's heavy, it's great. And then when they put it on Crazy Nights, I'm like, what did they do to this? They neutered it. And I'm not a big fan of Crazy Nights. But I agree with you on Opus. That's probably the least Kiss song, maybe. Although I think Mitch Weissman plays keyboards on it. But that's all written by Plasmatics guys, right? But yeah, I mean, so you got, I Love Sex and Rock and Roll was written by Gene Simmons and West Beach. It's My Life was Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons. You have Priestess, that's a Plasmatics written song. Thief in the Night's a Gene Simmons song. And Opus is the Plasmatics guys. Ready to Rock is the Plasmatics. Richie Stotts actually is part of, their former lead guitarist, but it's Paul Stanley's guitar solo on it. Then you have Bump and Grind, which is written by, West Beach and Rod Swenson, but that's Ace Frehley playing a lead guitar. And when's the last time Ace Frehley and Gene Simmons actually appeared on a recording together? That's another question people can't really answer. Did they play ever together on The Elder? I don't think so. Did they ever play together on Unmasked? I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe Dynasty, because it got to the point where, Paul Stanley was playing bass on his songs. Ace was playing bass on his songs. Gene would be playing guitar on his songs, and you can hear it in a lot of the songs. It doesn't sound like Ace Frehley. It doesn't sound like Gene Simmons. But and then Ain't None of Your Business. Legends Never Die is a Gene song, and that appears once or twice on his vault. And then Ain't None of Your Business is Gene Simmons, Eric Carr, and Vinnie Vincent, which is, I think, a great closer. I just love. I love this album. I listen to it all the time still.
And there was a Kiss demo called "Ain't None of Your Business," but that's a completely different song. And that was a
Peter Criss sings it.
Yeah, that was a Peter Criss vocal.
I think it's going to be part of that Destroyer. I just ordered that Destroyer 45th anniversary. I believe.
Oh, is that right? I thought that was a Dynasty demo.
I don't know, but I think it's going to be part of that. I could be wrong. I got to look.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of something else for Dynasty.
Yeah. But yeah, ain't None of Your Business. The original version, I believe, is going to be on this on this album, on the Destroyer. I'm sorry, the Destroyer.
But
Box.
that one's a good tune. Ain't None of Your Business is a good tune too, and that's very punky and heavy.
Yeah,
You know, like the chorus, the vocal backing vocal melodies on the chorus is very like punk, very Ramones-esque.
right.
But yeah, no, I don't know if, just to clarify, what I meant earlier was it's interesting how the songs sound like Kiss songs, even on the tracks that don't feature Kiss members playing. You know,
Right.
like it's just interesting
Yeah.
how Gene still somehow got that sound. And I wonder if maybe Kiss
Well, he's
members
playing
played
bass
on
on
more. Yeah, I wonder if
it.
Kiss members played more on the album than they're credited as. Because
Yeah. Okay.
I listen to Ready or Rock, that sounds like Eric to me, but I could be wrong. I could be off.
Yeah, and they say, Mickey, was it Mickey Free or Michael Ray? Mickey Free plays acoustic on the Legends Never Die. Michael Ray's her new lead guitarist, and she did have him in concert when I saw her at the clubs here in Chicago. But it does sound a lot like Vinnie Vincent in a lot of the songs. So you wonder if he actually
Yeah, and
played.
he's not on the credits at all, right? At least according to Wikipedia. Am I wrong?
He wrote "Ain't None of Your Business" with Gene, but he's not playing on any of the playing credits. No, and yeah, you wonder. So I've tried to, like I said, this is a big mystery, and I've emailed West Beach a few times because I've even, I look up to Martin a lot as whoever writes I look up to anybody who writes a book. I think it's an amazing accomplishment, and I really wanted to maybe just delve into it and see if it goes anywhere. So I've emailed West Beach. Like I said, there was an interview with him a couple months ago on a podcast, and it sounded like they're already getting into the nitty gritty of it, and then they got sidetracked. He did mention that he wrote a song for Lemmy for Motorhead, and it appears Gene stole it and put it on Asylum. Love is a Deadly Weapon or something. And he even says, he goes, that's not how it was supposed to sound. So again, it was neutered. It was supposed to be a Motorhead song. But I've heard everything from bits and pieces of West Beach's interview to someone said maybe this was a bunch of Kiss demos that Gene just threw Wendy's voice on top of, which I find hard to believe.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because you never hear any Paul Stanley ever talk about this, and he plays on a song. Yeah, there's a lot of mystery surrounding the album. I really like to find out.
Yeah, they were pros. Paul and Gene did stuff like this even before Kiss. They would go into the studio and like at Electric Ladyland and like do background vocals on other band stuff. So I'm sure to Paul, this probably was kind of like just a favor, like a one-off thing. Gene obviously had a lot more to do with it, Yeah. And I'm sure Gene probably asked him to do the favor just to get his name on it, just for publicity. Like, oh, Paul's on the song.
So now you go to like, how do you get Ace Frehley to show up?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And I was so pumped for Ace to come back to the band. And then they had Mark St. John, and I'm not a big fan of Mark St. John's playing on Animalize. It's just Bumblebee. Doesn't go with the music. It was worse than Vinnie Vincent's. I mean, Vinnie Vincent, if you listen to A Million to One, that guitar solo is beautiful. So
it's a great song.
And you hear the guys from Iron Maiden talk about Vinnie Vincent, how he was just this amazing, he could play like Jeff Beck, but he decided he wanted to be Yngwie Malmsteen. And it just didn't work for me. I thought his solo albums were terrible. I laughed at him because it sounded like it was sped up. But anyway, yeah. So I was really hoping that Ace was coming back in the band after I heard this, and just didn't happen. Yeah. But
I wonder if they had talks at that time.
You always wonder if they're always talking, and I don't know.
There were rumors that they were going to reunite like 90,
correct,
or 89. I think Ace was in the media saying that they were going to reunite the next year or something, and then it never happened. Something like this, and that was like 89, 90. Yeah. I'm sure, like, even though if you go back, like there's I could point to interviews where Gene and Paul are like, we're never getting back together with those guys ever, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure they always thought in the back of their mind, they had that in their back pocket. Like one day we're going to get back together and that'll be like our ace in the hole, kind of like a trump card or whatever. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you had to rank, if you called this a Kiss album, where would you rank this with all the Kiss albums of the 80s?
Okay. That's a good question because I maybe skip over Legends Never Die. Every other song on this I love. Um, it's I think it's my favorite. I'm gonna put it out as my favorite, and
So
then
you'd
Lick It
put
Up.
it in on top of Lick It Up?
I would put it on top of Lick It Up. This is Contrarians, so why not, right? I'm gonna yeah, it's number one. Then I'll do Lick It Up and then Creatures, and
I
then Asylum,
yeah, I like
because all
Asylum.
Stanley's songs on Asylum are great, but
Yeah.
in a way they don't sound like his songs. They sound like Paul Stanley's solo trying to be an 80's up tempo rock, but they're great songs. Don't get me wrong, especially the lead song on that album,
Tears Are Falling.
King of the Mountain.
Oh, the title, not
Yeah,
the first track, the opening track.
yeah, that song is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna rate it number one, Marco. It's Contrarians. Let's go for it.
I would
Yeah.
probably put it like I would probably put it above The Elder.
Okay.
I do like Asylum's my number one Kiss 80's record.
All right.
But yeah, it'd be hard for me. I would put it above The Elder. It is very Creatures of the Night. I totally hear that. It's almost like tied with Creatures of the Night, to be honest, for me.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody who finds Creatures of the Night to be a little overrated.
I can
Um,
see that.
Same with Revenge. Creatures of the Night and Revenge, they're
I
almost like
totally agree with you. Yeah.
they're like gospel to Kiss fans, and like I
I
find they're just a
feel like
little overrated.
Paul Stanley's songs are kind of weak on those two albums when he was he carried the band through a lot of the 80's, but when Gene brings it. So you got, on Creatures, he brought it. And then on Revenge, just with Unholy, he brought it. But I agree with you 100% on both those. But in this, I know we're talking about Kiss and rating as a Kiss album. I don't want to neglect Wendy O. Williams and the impact she should have more of an impact on the rock and punk scene because she was a maverick. The work with Motorhead too, that's murky too. You hear stories about how that was it for Fast Eddie Clark, and he left Motorhead because he was doing work with Lemmy was doing work with Wendy O. Williams. But they're all tied in together. The Plasmatics went metal, and I was all in. I love Coup d'etat, and I love Metal Priestess. Again, all you guys, all you people, Patreons, or if you're going to put it elsewhere, anyone watching this, look it up. Fish and Musician. I'll put the post on link on there too. John Candy. It's friggin' great. There's one scene, she does the smashing stuff and there's explosions, and some dude just runs across the stage with a gas mask on and a fire extinguisher, and I was like, I'm 17, 18. I'm like, holy shit, this is great. So yeah, it was great stuff. It just rocked. And Coup d'etat, it was impeccably produced by Dieter Dirks. So I think maybe the production on that's a little bit better than Gene went for that heavy boom boom Creatures sound, but the Dieter Dirks sound on Coup d'etat with the Plasmatics is really crisp and heavy, and there's some great stuff on that. But yeah, I really think Wendy Williams needs her due, and I really was pissed off when Miley Cyrus. Not too many. I mean, not too many people know about the Plasmatics. But if you look at her latest album and the photo and the logo, she ripped it off 100%. And she didn't even go in that route. I checked out the album. I'm like, maybe she's going full on rock and she's doing Metallica songs, on TV and everything. The album sucks. But she ripped off the Plasmatics with their logo. So yeah, but I don't. I want to talk about Kiss for sure, but I don't want Wendy Williams to get lost in the shuffle here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was a great album. I liked it a lot. I was digging Commander of Chaos, I think.
Yeah, that was a great album too. Yeah.
And it's interesting too. There must be something going on because like on Spotify, Commander of Chaos, and I think she did 3 solo albums, but this one's not
No, she did
on.
2. Well, no, she did another one that I don't have. It's really
from 88 maybe. And I think
right.
Commander of Chaos and the other one are on Spotify, but this is not on Spotify, and I don't know why. I have no idea. But
I just remember they reformed for that. It was a concept album called Maggots, and I thought it was okay. It wasn't Coup d'etat or Metal Priestess. And we went to go see them, and it brought in. It was at the exit The old exit, not the new one. But now the new one's like been at that location for 30 years. We're going to talk about that in that 2000 episode. How time flies. But yeah, it was packed to the rafters when they for that reunion thing. I think they could have had it at a bigger venue like the Aragon. But yeah, they were great entertainers. The Plasmatics were great. Wendy Williams live and her solo albums were great live. We saw them at little clubs there. We were right up front. She was totally cool. And then yeah, and then they had the reunion. Yeah, that one album, it's interesting you brought that up because I think it's not even like rock or something, and I never really knew about it or looked into it.
Yeah, I can tell you what it's
Yeah.
called.
All right.
I just have to search it up just in a second, but yeah, no. Let's doing this, I was always familiar with her, but doing this made me want to find
Yeah,
out
so
more
even
about her.
with this w.o.w album, like, so I have my original.
Oh, it's called Deafest and Baddest. Maybe that's just a compilation.
Yeah. So this album, this is my.
88.
I was a DJ at a rock station at the University of Iowa. So I got this as a promo copy, and I have a couple
Nice.
other copies. And even if you look it up, like for releases for 1984, they don't know when it was released, and it was on Gem Records. It wasn't even on a huge label in Plainfield, New Jersey, 1984. But I knew it was definitely released a little bit before the summer because it was definitely in my car all that summer listening to it.
Yeah, the 88 album is called Deafest and Baddest.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't.
I don't know if you can see this or not, but oh, yeah, my background won't let me show the album cover, but like a peeled banana.
I'll have to check that out. I guess that maybe that doesn't coincide with my fandom, but I mean, maybe was that after? I think that might have been after the Plasmatics reunion, so I lost interest. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's called Wendy O. Williams, Deafest and Baddest.
Yeah,
Ultrafly and the Hometown Girls.
yeah, it must be. I think it
Oh,
was.
it's not. It's a departure from punk rock and heavy metal.
So it must be a hip
It's
hop.
a rock-based rap and hip hop album.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. I actually want to check it out.
I'm definitely going to check it out. So you
I'm gonna have to check
opened my world up here, Marco. Let's not forget too. When this album was released, she was in a really awful B movie called Reform School Girls, and I remember
I have
seeing.
to check that one out too.
Yeah, I remember seeing that at the drive-in, and it was a pretty nasty drive-in too in Cicero, Illinois. I had a friend, a girl who I actually went to school with. She was stabbed there, so it was pretty rough. Yeah, it was pretty rough drive-in. But yeah, Reform School Girls. She was in that movie right around this time too. So it was like she was on the cusp of like breaking it big, and she was on like Rockline. I remember she was on the Rockline the same night as Ozzy, and it was a pretty cool show. And Ozzy was, agreeing with her and stuff and different things. But yeah, so I'm gonna rate this as my top Kiss album of the 80s.
Nice.
And
Go
daggers to get thrown at me.
go listen to Deafest and Baddest, and maybe we'll come back and we'll do an episode on that.
Yeah, that would be great. Well,
That'll be fun.
Yeah. Well,
All right,
once again, Marco, I want to thank you. This is so much fun. It really is.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Doing this with all you folks from the Patreon thing, it's awesome. It's made me broaden my horizons and listen to a bunch of stuff I've never heard before. So that's really just doing the channel in general. Like I used to think I knew music until I started working with Martin Popoff, and I'm like, I don't know anything about music, So this is actually a really cool experience for me. So.
Yeah, definitely. And in talking to the other guys and finding out what they like, and then like Andee finding out about his band, it's such a cool thing. So no, thanks a lot for having me on.
That's awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Everybody, I mean, whether if you're a rock fan, metal fan, get the w.o.w album. Kiss fan, check it out if you haven't heard it. And hopefully one day we'll get more clarity on the album. If I ever meet Gene Simmons again, I'm just going to talk about this album and see if he gives me a great answer. So it will be my 4th time meeting him, but we'll see.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Thanks, Marco. All right.
Checking us out.
That's it, dude.